have not seen, and still they roam in deepest night. Hear, oh, hear from every nation cries of sorrow and distress. Time is surely swiftly ending, haste their dying souls to bless. Hear them calling for the gospel, come and help us to be saved. Hear them calling for the gospel, come and help us to be saved. We will pray the Lord to send his saving truth through every land. Go ye therefore, saith the Master, do you hear the great command? Oh, review your consecration, hasten to the harvest field, and 1,000 souls in heaven gathered be thy golden yield. Hear them calling for the gospel, come and help us to be saved. Hear them calling for the gospel, come and help us to be saved. Number 311. I cannot be idle, for Jesus says, go and work in my harvest today. And then at the evening, when labor is done, whatever is right I will pay. Then away to the work I will go, and join in the reaping of grain, and back from the harvest with bountiful sheaves I'll come with rejoicing again. I cannot be idle, the fields are so wide, and numberless sheaves will be lost. They perish for want of more reapers to save. How awful to think of the cost. Then away to the work I will go, and join in the reaping of grain, and back from the harvest with beautiful sheaves I'll come with rejoicing again. I cannot be idle, soon time will be o'er, and reaping be ended for aye. I'll gather the lost from the byways of sin, to walk in the beautiful way. Then away to the work I will go, and join in the reaping of grain, and back from the harvest with beautiful sheaves I'll come with rejoicing again. I cannot be idle, no time for repose. My resting shall be over there, where all of the faithful in heaven above a crown of bright glory shall wear. Then away to the work I will go, and join in the reaping of grain, and back from the harvest with beautiful sheaves I'll come with rejoicing again.
Number 15.
number 15. Men speak of a church triumphant as something on earth unknown. They think us beneath the tyrant until we shall reach our home. Thank God for a church triumphant, all pure in this world below. For the kingdom that Jesus founded does triumph for every foe. Oh, cannot the great Redeemer prevail over Satan here? Or must we remain yet under confusion, pressed down in fear? Thank God for a church triumphant, all pure in this world below. For the kingdom that Jesus founded does triumph for every foe. He built on a sure foundation and said that the gates of hell against her divine munition never indeed prevail. Thank God for church triumphant, all pure in this world below. For the kingdom that Jesus founded does triumph for every foe. 'Tis not in the church of Jesus that people yet live in sin, but in the dark creeds they're joining and vainly are trusting in. Thank God for church triumphant, all pure in this world below. For the kingdom that Jesus founded does triumph for every foe. God's church is alone triumphant, in holiness all complete, and all the dark powers of Satan she tramples beneath her feet. Thank God for church triumphant, all pure in this world below. For the kingdom that Jesus founded does triumph for every foe.
Good afternoon. Appreciate those that stayed here for afternoon service. 2 Corinthians 9 and 15. Thanks be unto God for his unspeakable gift. And, you think about that. What is unspeakable about the gift? As a minister, I try to get up and talk about it a lot. But to me, the unspeakable part is, how do you truly put in words the complete, wonderful picture of that gift? Because I don't know about you, but oftentimes I just feel so inadequate trying to explain to people. I've had people at work ask me, oh, you're going on vacation. Where are you going? I'm going to this church meeting. And I've had a few people, why? That's what you do for fun? Oh, absolutely. It's a blast. And how do you put that into words? The gift that you've been given that, we try to share with others. But that's just, to me, one of the wonderful mercies of God, that he's put that gift out there through his son, and we have the opportunity to partake of it. Any additional prayer requests or unspoken requests this afternoon from this morning?
I'd like to be anointed and prayed
Brother Tony would like to pray for. You want to go ahead and do that now before the...
quick and necessary comment before we let Brother Eric speak. Boys, you can't throw rocks in the parking lot. And parents, check with your boys and see if somebody's been doing that. Would you please? There's $750,000 worth of vehicles out there. Not one owner wants to have a dent put in it by a car, by a rock. And also, you can put somebody's eye out that way. When you throw a rock, you don't know where it's going to hit. So it's time to stop that, please.
I do appreciate y'all's interest this afternoon, and I'm very much glad to be home. Yes, we are, should be live streaming this. So for those that would like to watch it online, we should have that, and also should end up with a recording there. Let me get the... We'll have a pause for technology. I will say of my trip, was a much longer flight there and back this time. I've never had as many stops before. Flying to India, I left here, flew to Atlanta, flew to New York, to Abu Dhabi, and then finally into Atlanta. And coming back, it was from Trivandrum to Abu Dhabi to New York to Dallas, back into Oklahoma City. So it seemed like to me it was quite the around the world. See if this will. There we go. All right. So I left here, flew to Trivandrum, arrived on a Thursday evening. I didn't take pictures of the arrival, of the eating dinner, of the hotels. I personally don't find that very entertaining. But I stayed in Trivandrum that evening with Bijou. He and I started just conversating about, you know, what's the plan, what was the intent behind a lot of the trip. So spent the night there in Trivandrum, and then Friday morning got up. We went to Kotarakara, which is where Bijou lives, had dinner there at his house, picked up a couple of the other brethren, and then we went on up to Trisher. Now, Trisher is where Clint goes a lot of the time. My first time to get to go to Trisher. Bijou, yeah. Bijou he's actually the gentleman on the left. He's Brother John Varghese's son. And he's pretty much taken on the work that his father had been doing and working to actually help just keep the ministers encouraged in the area, provide support to them. He also provides a lot of support to me when it comes to being able to communicate. He's the main translator when I go over there. So he was wanting to go up to Trisher. The folks in Trisher and the folks in Southern Carolina had not really had much contact over the last several years. And there was some interest in reaching back out and reestablishing some of that unity of fellowship. So we went up there. They had a meeting on Saturday. This right here is Brother Bijou, myself, and a gentleman, Brother Martin. He's the one that put me up in his house while we stayed up there in Trisher. I greatly appreciated it. He had an air-conditioned room. The average temperature when I was there in Trivandrum was 95 degrees. So it was kind of a little on the warm side. So we spent there Friday night there. Saturday we got up. This is us walking to the church there at Trisher. That is the church building on that side. This is inside the building. I did not get many pictures in Trisher. My apologies. Hindsight's always much clearer. At the time, I was meeting new people. I was excited to meet them, enjoying to talk to them. And this is the only picture I have of Trisha inside the chapel. So we had Saturday, we started the service around 10 o'clock. Had about four speakers during the service. I was one of them. After the service, they actually took and cleared all of the chairs out of the chapel. They brought in tables. And one thing that they did is the ministers and the, I guess you call them elders or deacons, came in and actually served all the people at the table. I thought that was kind of neat. It reminded me of some of what we've read in the Bible of the folks coming in and ministering. And so we had a meal. Then after the meal, there was a ministers' meeting. That was interesting to me to sit in on because oftentimes you get to see the Bible talks about differences of administration, the different ways people do things. Very collegial, very friendly with each other. They discussed different meeting dates and times, similar to some of what I've heard here in America, where, okay, well, this congregation's having their meeting at this time, and this one's having their meeting here, and we need to, try to allow as little overlap as possible. A lot of discussion there, a little bit of discussion around some of the doctrines, and really ended up with a good meeting, very open and friendly meeting. And the brethren, like I mentioned, they hadn't seen each other for quite a while. Very happy to be reestablishing the communications and the visitation with each other. And that went very well. We went back to Brother Martin's house. Some of the others went walking around. I was jet lagged. I took a nap in the afternoon, ate dinner. And then on Sunday, we woke up, had another good breakfast, and then we went to this congregation near, I think it's Ketam Madam. My Malayalam is terrible. But this is the chapel there, a little small chapel. Very wonderful group of people. We had a service there on Sunday. As I mentioned to Brother Ed, they asked me to preach, so I did. And they seemed very excited. Either my message went over well, or Brother Bijou did a very good job of preaching a different one. But they seemed to really enjoy the time together. I do like to get the group photos. The gentleman on the far right, first row sitting, his parents are some of the elders in the church, and I was invited to go to their house to visit with them and to pray for them. His dad's 85, his mother's 78, and he's actually left his job in the Middle East and came home to take care of his parents. I thought that was very admirable. A lot of times here in America, it's find a nursing home, stick them in it. And yet he was talking about this is what he felt called to do. So I did want to say that was a very impressive thing for me to see someone taking that. Yeah, their shoes. Yeah, one thing in India, you will not go into very many buildings with your shoes on. When I was traveling, and even in some of the museums, you would take your shoes off to go into the museum. Now, if it's an actual restaurant that's a lot of traffic, they don't take the shoes off to go into the restaurant. But a lot of the buildings, you will take your shoes off. And so you either have good socks on, or they notice how holy your footwear is. Took a couple of selfies. This was the minister there, and then his wife. And also some of the children, when they saw me taking a selfie, they knew the word selfie. And they wanted to get in it, and this little fella right here, he was really cute. I don't know about y'all, but he could wrap me around his finger pretty quick. This is our meal there with the minister. The minister on the right is Brother Matthew, of course, Bijou. The gentleman across was Reggie. He was just one of the gentlemen driving us that time. I will say the food, I didn't really lose weight there because that was my first plate, and they will come by, and if they think your plate is getting empty, they will load it up for you without asking. They'll just start. Several times I'm literally having to put my hands in the way to block the food and say, no, I really am done. I'm full. But very cordial, very hospitable people. Yeah, I did have silverware at that time. I did eat with my hands most of the time with Bijou and family. He actually said I'm getting pretty good at that because in India, even in the restaurants, you rarely see silverware. But this time, they actually brought the silverware out without asking me, so I didn't necessarily feel like saying, I want to make a fool of myself in front of you, no thanks. So I did eat with the silverware. This was the next day after we finished up there. We drove back to Katarakara, and this is just a little side note. I don't know if you realize those black items are cashews. So this is actually how they process cashews. They take the, let me find a cashew fruit. I think I had one in here, yeah. So this is what a cashew fruit looks like, the little top part. This one's still young. It'll eventually get up about yay big and turn yellow. And it's a fruit that they say is good for indigestion, and then the bottom part becomes hard, and that's actually where the one cashew is at. And so they take that cashew, they roast it, but it has to be roasted just right, and then in this machine over here, they pick the cashew up, put it in it, and split it. And then the lady to the left is cleaning the, I guess you call it the charcoal off. And then when they're done, they end up with these cashews to sell. So, in fact, I think I have some from this place Bijou bought you. So remind me to get it to you. This was a little farmer's market we went to. They had some of the historical wagons and implements that they used to use in the past. We did also do just a tour of the area there. This is Bijou, his daughter on the far right, Reggie behind us, and then Reggie's son that was directly behind me. This was something I found interesting. This is a net that's cantilevered. And you can't see this side, but if you look kind of going back up that way, you see a pole. So when they're fishing with these nets, they pull that lever basically from the shore, and that entire net will drop. And then here's an example of one where you can see where the net is down in the water. And you can see the big lever with the rope on it. And so once they've had it down in the water for a while, they'll actually pull that lever and pull it back up to catch the fish. And I found that kind of interesting. It's a different way of fishing than I've ever seen before. There is a picture of a big statue here. I included this one. There's a lot of temples in India. It's a different country when it comes to religion. They have, of course, the Hindu religion being the majority, the Muslims, the Christians. And it seems like just about every street corner you run into some sign, some little shrine, a temple. And in this one, there was a large, I guess it was a goddess, must have been 50, 60 feet tall outside. I didn't include the picture because it's not modest. I didn't figure it'd be appropriate to show that. But I did want to show the front entrance here, because this is some of the things that I found interesting. In India, these people are used to a plurality of gods. In the Hindu religion, they don't worship one God. They worship many, or you may only be a devotee of one of the many gods. And it's a very, from my point of view, strange environment to consider that there is no one overarching God of all. And it was something I found quite interesting. I included this one because you see the water glasses on the table? Now remember, it's on average 95 degrees during the day. And every time we would go into a restaurant, I kept wondering why they kept serving me hot water. And when I say hot water, I'm talking about hot enough that you'd be trying to barely hold on to the glass while you drank it. At first I thought, well, maybe they're ordering this for me because I'm the foreigner and they don't want me to get bad water, so they're boiling it. Come to find out, this is common to serve hot water at every meal in the summertime. It was a little odd for me. I enjoyed the water. They would oftentimes put a little spice into the water, so it was good, but it was just, in America, we're used to ice glasses of water for our meals. That was a little bit of a strange takeaway. Now, this was back in Katarakara, so on Monday, we met with the ministers there in Katarakara. Achan Kunju is the gentleman on the right. Then you have Baby Matthew Jr. Then you have Achan Kunju in K, which is the the man third on that side. Then we have Matthew Joseph is in the middle, and then Givar Geese is the man sitting there. And then we have Shaji, and then M. Babu, and Matthew M., the gentleman on this side. So these men came in. This was their regular ministers' meeting. They tend to do about once a month or every 2 months. And what I really enjoyed listening to the minister meeting is these gentlemen, to give you an idea of the work they're doing, in India, there are a lot of states starting to pass anti-conversion laws. So they talk about you have a freedom of religion, but you don't have a freedom to convert people in some areas. And yet these men will go out into the community looking for people they can help, looking for people that they can talk to with the sole purpose of eventually talking to them about Christ. And so as part of their ministers' meeting, they come in and they talk about who they've had interactions with. They talk about it, which areas seem to be open to having a further discussion. And then if they deem it time, they will schedule one or two of the ministers to get together and go back and visit with these folks. And I really appreciated that, because I know here in America sometimes our outreach is very passive. And I admire their more open outreach, even in spite of the political dangers they may run into for doing that. We talked a bit about the prayer request in their various congregations. One of the other things that they do with their ministers' meeting is they will bring all the prayer requests from the congregation, and they will pray for every one of those requests in that ministers' meeting. That's something they make a point of doing. Now, one of the things I asked them was, what is some of their biggest burdens? What's some of their biggest desires there in India? And it was almost like an instant universal response from every minister there. We want our churches to grow. And that just warmed my heart, because there was no hesitation. I was like, if there was one thing I could pray for you all, just really pray that the Lord would bless you all, what would it be? Churches to grow, just like that. And then the other one was, of course, safety from the government, safety from persecution. And then the last one was they prayed that the Lord would weaken the resistance to the gospel. And for me, that really, until you've been in a country where you start realizing that, there is a danger in preaching the gospel in some of these areas. There is a concern. I mean, just this year, they've had Christian pastors beat and attack in India, mainly in the northern part. This is down in the southern part, just for being a Christian. And so these men know that there's a growing Hindu nationalism in there, and that as part of it, it's bringing a danger to what they do for the Lord, but they seem very, very willing to embrace it and to try to move the work forward. We also visited 2 chapels in the area. This is Nadukunu. This chapel is one we've been working with them. They've had the roof replaced. I don't know if you can tell, but this is a very new sign. They needed a new roof. They'd been talking about putting up a tin roof on this, but some of the drawbacks with the tin roof in India is the heat will come through the tin roof pretty quick. And so if you're trying to have service in there, the tin roof tends to just transmit the heat into the building. So what they did instead here, they replaced the wood support structure, the rafters and the purlines, with steel, and then put the clay tiles back on top, because the clays are much more of a barrier against the heat. Some of the challenges that they still have left there, they were able to do this. They still owe about $2,000 on the work, and they're also wanting to improve some of the lighting. So that is something we'll be trying to help them with, good Lord willing. This is the pastor there and his wife. We also have this chapel here at Thrikanamagal, give or take. This one is also in a similar shape. You can't see it. I didn't realize how blurry these photos were. The purlines up top are actually starting to decay and crack once again. And so the plans here is to be able to pull the clay tiles off. Now the rafters are still in good enough shape that they don't intend to replace the rafters now, just the purlines, and then put the clay tile back on. That's currently estimated to be about $1,000 that they're going to need for that. We also have a chapel at Villiers-en-Thor where the parsonage needs repairs. About $1,000 is needed for that. It's really touching to see these people, and they're willing to take anything that you can give them to help out. They will reuse things like, taking the clay tiles off and trying to preserve them to put back up rather than incur additional cost. Now this picture is of a young man. I did not get his name, but he's one of the pastor's sons. And the reason why I took this picture is, some of the things that we have going on in our country, they have going on in theirs too. They've got young people that are growing up and wanting to get good jobs and to be able to support families. And in India, a college degree is much more a requirement, I would say, than here. They tend to really be focused in on getting a degree. Now, this young man has chosen to go a trades route. They do have an option where you can go to a trade school. But when I was talking to Bijou and different ministers in there, a lot of the young people, even if they get their college degree, there's just not jobs in the area. And so they end up traveling off. They end up going to the Middle East. They end up going to England, to the UK. Some of them come to America. And as I talked about, what's the impact on the congregations? And culture. These young people leave and they come back and they suddenly don't appreciate some of the old ways. They don't see the need to, when I was over here, I found new ways and new things to do. And of course, then you also have what relationships are being built. I can tell you that I've known young people that's graduated high school, gone off to college, met someone, got married, and it worked out. But I've also known quite a few where they met someone, got married, and now they're wandered off, they're wandered away. And so, some of the burden that I do have for these people is to help the young people to really dig in deep, to be able to settle in deep, because it's going to be a rough life for them over there. This is just a part. At the last little bit, we took a hike. This is a place called Malamel Para. It's a rock on top of the hill, and I found out that's literally what it means in Malayalam. Mala is hill, Mel is top, and Para is rock. But it was a place to go, and we looked around. This is Bijou and Reggie and myself on the top of the rock right there. But it's a beautiful country. And when I look at that, and now oftentimes the locals even refer to it as God's country. Now, I've often found that amusing because they say it as God '(S), as if it's a singular God's country. And to me, there's a bit of humor in that, okay, you believe in all these gods, plural, but when you refer to the country, you assign it to a singular God. Sometimes I wonder if their subconscious part isn't realizing, this couldn't be a designed by committee moment. This was designed by an expert. But in this area, I can tell you, meeting and talking with the ministers in that ministers meeting, I have a lot of respect for those men. They are very knowledgeable in the doctrine. When I say church history, I'm not talking about just evening light church history, but like church history, like when did and how did Pentecostal tongues come about? When did the Catholic Church have issues? They are very knowledgeable, and I felt a little challenged. Lord, help me to be able to converse as easily on these subjects as those men could, not just generalities, but they would give you dates and names and who was impacted. It was a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed talking to them. All of the brethren there were just so open and so kind. The congregations were willing. They all appreciated me coming over, so I know they appreciated all the support that you folks give them with the assistance for putting the roofs on the chapels, and also for the assistance we give the pastors. That's very much appreciated. Any questions on this?
Can you give us kind of an overview
Yeah, so right now, a lot of times we're averaging, I think it's about $75 a month support for the pastors. We've got 16 there in the area with Bijou. That I would like to suggest we up that amount because that $75 has been static, I think, for about 25 years. So while they appreciate it and they've not asked for more, when I've been over there looking at it, just from a cost of living viewpoint, I really would like to see if we could increase that for the ministers.
Brother Eric, after what Brother Tony asked, what two things, maybe differences in the culture, but what about, I don't even know what the minimum wage is over here. How does this compare with over there, the cost of goods? Maybe I'd ask that.
So the cost of goods is less over there. If you look at it, if you were to convert it, everything into dollars, you can buy much more with your money there in India to a point. And then it can actually in some ways get more expensive. Bijou and I were talking about the building cost over there. And depending upon what you're building and how you're building it, that can actually get quite expensive. Because they do a lot of concrete and block buildings over there. And bringing in the heavy equipment to deal with the concrete and pump it up and things like that. That'll run you a little more than if you're just going to stick frame a house. But a stick frame house over there is actually even more expensive because they just don't really do lumber building over there. The idea of a wooden house to them, it's almost like, what? Why would you do a wooden house? How long does that last? And even when Bijou and I were talking, and I explained, well, I have a brick veneer on the outside of the house. The idea of having wood behind that as the main support just was not high up on his list of smart ideas.
Is there humidity worse over there?
Yes.
What about the culture? Is it as depraved as ours is over here?
So they do have some of the depravity, but it was interesting because there's a lot more of cultural adherence to some of the older standards in India. So a lot of the things that we would see a lot here, like you almost, abortion's not hardly a thing for them. Because the idea of doing something like that to a child, no. It doesn't matter if you're Hindu, Muslim, no, you don't do that. The instances of folks living together before marriage, there's a lot of social pressure still to not allow that. That being said, however, there's an increase in people with drug and alcohol and addiction starting there. So that is something that they're starting to struggle with more. Kind of talking with Bijou and them back to folks that travel out to other countries, get influenced, and then come back home and are trying to continue on with what they picked up in, unfortunately, foreign lands. It is interesting from a cultural viewpoint, though. Lying is a different thing for those folks. Sometimes they will lie because they feel like it's for the greater good. And in the Hindu culture, if you look into it, while telling the truth is one of the highest pillars they have, they also have this, if you are lying because of something that's going to be for the greater good, then that's okay too. And the reason why I mention that is because some of the challenges is you can actually be preaching, and I think Clint had a little bit of taste of this in the trip right before mine. The police were called. And if I'm correct, they were kind of told that, well, these people are trying to convert people and they're doing things that are illegal, which wasn't really the case, but as the Hindu person trying to get rid of the non-Hindu, this is for the greater good, so this is a perfectly okay thing to do. And that is one thing that both times I've been there, Bijou has tended, if it's a small congregation where he's pretty sure we're not going to have outside influence, he's much more relaxed. But in some of the larger congregations, he's told me before, hold your seat until I'm sure that we don't have unknowns in the congregation, because I don't want you to get in trouble for getting up and preaching. Because technically, on a tourist visa, you're not supposed to do that.
How much does the $75 actually cover? I know we talked about the increase, but what is the purpose of those funds? Is it for food? Is it for living? And how could we assist more in that?
So it is to support the ministers. Some of the congregations are very small. The one that we went to on the Sunday for the Sunday service, it was very small and looked to have a lot of widowed or divorced women in it. So they tend to have a harder time supporting themselves, which means the minister will not probably be getting much in the way of tithes or support from the congregation. So this is intended to be able to help keep those ministers keep their families fed, clothes. Some of the ministers, when I visited the parsonages, it's a 2-room parsonage. You've got a minister and his wife and 3 children living there. And not necessarily 3 little children. Sometimes it's 3 children, including children about to go off to college. And, you have a blanket or something in one corner where you can change in privacy, but the parsonages, some of them need expanding, in my opinion, to really do better for the preachers living there. One thing they do there that is different from what we do here, at least in the area there around where Bijou is at, usually they will change between the congregations about every 2 to 3, sometimes 4 years. The ministers will move and swap congregations around. There's the reason why I kind of took note of that. That means if you're in one of the congregations that doesn't support as well, you might get moved to one that supports a little better. But then if you're in one better, you might get moved to one that is a little more of a challenge to make your ends meet in. And the ministers are very much concerned about their flocks. From what I've seen there, they would rather go hungry than have their congregations go hungry. They're willing to do without and preach the word than they would be to try to pull from folks. And so that's where I definitely personally feel like that I'm willing to support where I can, and anybody that's willing to help support, we can talk.
Culturally, do they have small or large families?
It's a mix from what I've seen. Most of the families right now that I've ran into, generally about 3 children seem to be kind of the norm. Sometimes you'll run into one that might have 4 or 5, and then sometimes just 1 or 2, but about 3 seems to be about average.
Also, are there other, here in the U.S. we have Life Church and large non-denominational churches. Do they also have that in India or?
Yes. So in India, they actually have quite a few churches, especially there in Kerala. Kerala has been one of the more Christian predominant states. The Catholic Church is heavy in the area. The Orthodox Church is also in the area. There's a growing movement from the Pentecostals in the area. Talking to Bijou, that's been one that has actually drawn some folks away from our churches to go to the Pentecostal churches. So that's one of the things that's been a challenge in the area. They have the Lutheran Church in the area and even some of the Episcopals in the area. So there are some of those out there. Not as many of the, what I'm going to call the mega-style churches with the bands and all that. There is a lot more of the traditional worship than the praise and worship that we have sometimes here in America.
Do the men in the churches over there, are a lot of them self-employed, or they work for other businesses, or do you know on that part of it?
So a lot of them are a mix. So some of the men actually, they have land that they will raise crops on, but oftentimes they're actually doing both. They will be working for someone, but they also will be raising crops. And a lot of the discussions I had, a lot of the men seem to kind of be that, yes, we've got the work I do, but then I'm also trying to raise and get extra money in for the family and to support the family. Sometimes it's food crops, you know, the coconut trees, they do have plantains, bananas, tapioca, mango. They do a lot of fruit trees that they grow and harvest as well. And some of them also have rubber trees planted that they'll harvest, and they basically take the latex that comes out of the tree, mix it with the acid, turn it into a little mat, and then apparently if you take the mat and put it in a smokehouse till it goes dark, you get a better price for it. Talking to some of the men that work the rubber. So I don't know why the color makes a difference, but if you smoke it, they say you can definitely get a higher price for it. Any other questions?
Yes, were you comfortable with their doctrinal positions?
Yes, very much so. We had quite a bit of a discussion there, especially at Bijou's house, around salvation, sanctification on that, and I felt very comfortable with their understandings and the way they were looking at things. So I do know I've appreciated the support that y'all folks have given. I would appreciate it if you continue to feel so inclined, if the Lord would put it on your hearts. Good Lord willing, right now my plans tentatively would be to go back in October. I think 95 degrees is about the hottest I want to feel there. So we'll probably be trying to get the trips more into the winter, the cooler month time frame. Although the last time I went on October, I was still constantly sweating because Randy asked about the humidity. The humidity is pretty thick over there at times. Actually, I think it's worse than Louisiana.
Which part of India were you at?
Let me see if I can. So this, it changed on me. Let me get this back here. Did it actually stop sharing? Yeah, sorry, let me reconnect that. So this is the tip of India. I flew in down here in Trivandrum. The next little spot up is Katarakara, where Bijou is at, and then the folks in Trishur, just north of Trishur, is where we had the meeting on Saturday, followed by the First Ministers meeting. Where the children are, that's where the second chapel we went to on Sunday was. And then we came back down to, I don't know if this will show sometimes it'll show the location of so compared to the different areas around Katarakara where the chapels were and where we met at. So it's all right there you zoom out a bit, in the southern tip of India. Any other questions? Well, if not, I do appreciate y'all's time and attention. Appreciate the support that y'all have given. I do intend to work with Sister Violet. We had planned on starting a newsletter and getting one out. However, a one-arm newsletter doesn't go out as fast. And since she broke her arm, it's kind of slowed down that effort. But we are going to be getting a newsletter out and try to be a little more consistent at getting some of the communication out on that for those of us that are helping support. So do we have a song or anything? We could stand and maybe be dismissed.